I never thought the rehearsal dinner for my sister's wedding would end with glass shattering on marble floors and the entire ballroom staring at me. But that is exactly what happened. It began with a single photograph. I had it saved on a small silver flash drive that I slipped into my pocket before leaving my apartment that night. The hotel ballroom was all dressed up in crystal chandeliers and white roses, the kind of place where money whispered in every corner. I watched the guests raise their glasses in honor of my sister Vanessa and her fiancé Ryan. I sat quiet at the far end of the table, the flash drive burning like a stone in my pocket. Then I stood. My voice was steady when I asked the technician to put on the slideshow. Everyone expected childhood pictures, vacations, maybe a few awkward school portraits. Instead, the screen lit up with Vanessa straddling a stranger at a nightclub. Her caption was written in bold letters, "Last night of freedom." The room froze. Forks clinked against china, and then silence spread like smoke. Vanessa leapt from her chair face, drained of color, and hissed, "You can't cancel now. The $2 million estate money is already ours." I held the microphone my knuckles tight. The photo lingered on the screen behind me, every guest able to see the man's hands gripping her waist. A murmur rolled through the crowd, low at first, then louder, rippling like a tide. My mother, Charlotte, slammed her glass down so hard red wine spilled across the white linen. She glared at me as if I were the one who had broken the family's honor. I felt alone in that ballroom, though surrounded by hundreds of eyes. Loneliness can feel heavier when you are dressed in your best clothes, standing among people who claim to be family, yet look at you as if you are the intruder. On the table beside me sat the neat stack of programs embossed with Ryan and Vanessa's names in gold. I pressed the microphone closer, the weight of that small flash drive suddenly worth more than every flower in the room. And yet outwardly the dinner carried on with forced laughter. A few cousins tried to lift their glasses again, pretending nothing had happened. I saw the act, the artificial smiles, the need to keep appearances intact. But beneath the thin cover, the tension was already too sharp to hide. That night marked the beginning of a storm, though few understood it yet. This wasn't only about a wedding or about a nightclub mistake. It was about inheritance, pride, and betrayal, things that had been festering in my family for years. I will explain in a moment. For now, let me ask you this. Tell me where you're watching from, and hit subscribe. We need to talk about families and money. My name is Eleanor. I turned 30 this past spring, and most days I live the life of someone who prefers order. I teach literature at a university in New York. My students think I am strict, but I simply ask them to read carefully and speak honestly. My savings account holds more than $200,000 money. I built slowly from long hours of teaching summer courses, tutoring, and saying no to frivolous things. I do not live lavishly, but I live securely. There is also the matter of inheritance. My grandmother, the only steady presence of kindness I knew growing up, left an estate worth more than $2 million. The terms were simple. The property and its trust would pass to the family member who upheld dignity and responsibility. At the time of her passing, I did not imagine that condition would ever be tested in public. But families, like rivers, often carve paths we never predict. My mother, Charlotte, has always been a woman of appearances. She loves designer handbags more than she loves quiet evenings, and she measures success by how many people notice her at church on Sunday. When I was younger, she pressed me to smile more, to lose weight, to choose a husband quickly. My worth in her eyes was measured by who stood beside me, not what I accomplished on my own. My sister Vanessa, 4 years younger, became her jewel. Blonde, loud, always ready for a photograph, Vanessa was raised to be admired, not questioned. Ryan, Vanessa's fiancé, is a man of finance. He works on Wall Street, talks quickly about markets and mergers, and spends weekends sailing with colleagues. My mother adored him instantly. "He elevates our family," she whispered one evening at dinner, as though she were discussing a piece of real estate. That same evening, while candles flickered on our dining table, I sat quietly cutting my chicken while Vanessa boasted about wedding plans. "Ryan's colleagues are flying in from London," she said, waving her phone like a trophy. "It will be the event of the year." My mother nodded proud. Then she turned to me with a smile that was not really a smile. "Eleanor, your sister is the pride of this family. Try to support her without causing scenes." I swallowed the words I wanted to say. I had no husband to parade, no yacht to photograph, no jewelry worth flashing. My only possessions of note were a small apartment lined with bookshelves and my grandmother's worn leather notebook. Sometimes silence is a shield. That night, silence was all I had. But what they didn't know was that I carried something heavier than silence. In the bottom of my bag, between graded essays and lecture notes, rested a folded copy of my grandmother's will. I had reread it many times, tracing the notary stamp with my thumb. It was my reminder that appearances are fragile. Dignity, however, leaves its own mark. That document would matter soon. Very soon. The week before the wedding, my phone buzzed late at night. I had been reading by the lamp, a cup of chamomile tea cooling on the table beside me. When I reached for the phone, the glow of the screen nearly blinded me. It was Vanessa's social media story. I tapped once, and the image opened full size. She was not at the cozy dinner with friends she had promised Ryan. She was in a club, the kind where neon lights paint faces into masks. She sat on the lap of a stranger, his hands on her waist, her lips pressed against his neck. The caption read in bold letters, "Last night of freedom." I froze. The story did not end there. More photos followed like punches. Vanessa grinding against him, the stranger pouring liquor down her throat, her bridesmaids cheering in the background. The final image showed them kissing fully, his hand climbing beneath her dress. And still she typed the words, "What happens at Bachelorette stays at Bachelorette." Except, she posted it for the world. I took screenshots. My thumb moved mechanically, saving each image before it could vanish. My chest felt hollow, as though the walls of my apartment had expanded to reveal just how alone I was in that moment. The next morning, I confronted my mother. Charlotte sat at her dining table, a silver teapot gleaming between us. I slid the phone across to her, the photos lined up in order. For a moment, she gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Then just as quickly, her eyes hardened. "Eleanor," she said sharply, "all brides do this. It is a game. Do not be cruel." I stared at her. A game? Is this how dignity looks? With strangers' hands up her dress? She waved her hand as if brushing dust from the air. "You are overreacting. If you love this family, you will keep silent." That was when I knew my mother feared shame more than she feared dishonor. But the truth did not stop at those images. Later that day, a friend of mine sent me a screenshot from another corner of the internet. Vanessa's private group chat with her bridesmaids had been leaked. There, in blunt text, Vanessa wrote, "The wedding is just for the trust fund. After the honeymoon, I will sell his condo." The words cut deeper than any photo. This was not carelessness. It was calculation. She wanted Ryan's wealth, and she wanted my grandmother's estate too. I sat at my desk with the printed screenshot spread before me, the pages crisp beneath my fingertips. The betrayal was no longer a suspicion. It was written, time-stamped, and undeniable. And yet, no one in the family wanted to see it. My mother clung to denial, Vanessa played innocent, and Ryan remained in the dark. For now. But what they didn't know was that I would not stay silent. The rehearsal dinner would not pass quietly. I would make sure of that. The rehearsal dinner was supposed to be the elegant prelude to Vanessa's grand wedding. The ballroom, shimmered with candlelight strings, played softly in the corner, and waiters in white gloves glided between tables with silver trays. Ryan's colleagues from the financial district had flown in, and my mother Charlotte flitted between them, her laughter sharp and practiced. I sat at a table near the back, my glass untouched. In my bag rested the small flash drive. I could feel its shape through the fabric, cold and solid. My heart thudded in my ears not from fear, but from a quiet determination. When the toasts began, Ryan's father spoke warmly of family legacies of trust, of pride. Then my mother rose, her champagne glass raised high. To Vanessa, she declared the jewel of our family. And to Ryan, who brings us honor, applause broke across the room. That was my cue. I stood my chair scraping loudly against the polished floor. "I have something to share," I said. The microphone felt heavy in my hand, but my voice did not waver. The projector screen flickered to life. Instead of baby photos or vacation snapshots, the first image was Vanessa in the club arms draped around the stranger. A gasp spread like a wave. I clicked again, another photo more compromising, more undeniable. Vanessa shrieked, rushing toward me, but the images rolled on. Her friends cheering as she straddled him, the liquor pouring down her throat, the kiss that left no doubt. The words, "Last night of freedom," glowed above them. "You can't do this," she screamed, her face blotched red. She grabbed the microphone, her voice cracking. "You can't cancel now. The $2 million estate money is already ours." The room erupted. Ryan stood frozen, his glass slipping from his hand and shattering on the floor. His colleagues whispered furiously, some pulling out their phones, others staring in open disbelief. Charlotte stormed toward me, her heels clicking like gunshots. You ruined your sister's future, she spat, all for a few dirty screenshots. You've humiliated this family. I held her gaze. She humiliated herself. I only showed the truth. Vanessa burst into tears, then dramatic mascara streaking down her face. It meant nothing, she sobbed. Every bride does this. It was just dancing. But on the screen, the stranger's hand slid beneath her dress, frozen in digital proof. There was no dancing in that image. I looked out at the guests, their shocked faces lit by the flickering screen. If dignity matters, I said quietly into the microphone, then let us see who still has it. And just when I thought the chaos had peaked, my phone buzzed. A message from a colleague who had been watching the event live streamed by a guest. He wrote, "The world is watching now." But the screenshots weren't the worst part. The texts were. By morning, the internet had already chewed up the rehearsal dinner and spat it out in millions of pieces. Someone at the event had streamed the whole meltdown. The clip spread faster than any rumor my family had ever tried to bury. Headlines carried Vanessa's face with bold letters, "The $1 million scam bride." I sat at my kitchen table with a cup of black coffee, scrolling through endless comments. People were brutal. Strangers analyzed every photo, every frame of the video, calling her careless, selfish, greedy. Some mocked her tears as stage crying, others repeated her own words. "The $2 million estate money is already ours." That line had turned into a meme overnight. My phone rang until I silenced it. Ryan's colleagues wanted explanations. Reporters wanted statements. Relatives wanted to know if it was all true. For once, I said nothing. Silence worked better than words. The internet was speaking loudly enough. Vanessa, however, played her part to perfection. She posted a video that morning in a conservative dress, no makeup, her voice trembling. She claimed I had always been jealous that I had weaponized social media against her. She spoke of love, of forgiveness, of how one night of harmless fun had been twisted into betrayal. The performance was good enough to fool those who did not know her. For a moment, I almost admired her nerve. But then came the messages. Screenshots of her private chat spilled online messages where she boasted about the plan. "The wedding is just for the trust fund. After honeymoon, I'll sell his condo." Her words, her spelling, her arrogance. No performance could erase that. Ryan saw them too. He called me, his voice flat. "Is this real?" he asked. I sent him the files. I had saved the photos, the chats, every timestamp. He read them silently. Then came a sigh, long and weary. "I thought she loved me." It might have ended there, but betrayal has a way of digging deeper. A woman contacted the news station the following day, Ryan's colleague's wife. She had proof that Vanessa had been exchanging intimate photos with the stranger from the club. Those images, once private, now threatened to become public. Charlotte still tried to hold the line. She cornered me at the family house, her pearls tight around her neck. "Eleanor," she hissed, "if you stay quiet, the estate will still be split. Do not destroy us completely." I looked at her, my own mother, bargaining dignity for silence. "You already destroyed us when you chose appearances over truth." Her hand trembled as she set down her teacup, but her eyes held mine. "You will regret this." Maybe I would, but in that moment regret seemed lighter than complicity. And still the storm was only beginning. The hotel suite smelled of roses and perfume when I entered, but the air was thick with tension. Vanessa sat on the velvet couch, her dress wrinkled, her eyes swollen from crying. Charlotte stood behind her shoulders square, as if she were shielding her from the world. Ryan was there, too pale and stiff, a folder in his hand. "Sit down," Charlotte ordered, her voice sharp. She no longer wore the smile she saved for parties. This was the mother I knew from childhood, the one who believed authority could solve any problem. I stayed standing. "I don't plan to stay long." Vanessa's lip trembled. "Why are you doing this to me, to us? You've always been jealous, Eleanor. You can't stand to see me happy." I reached into my bag and laid a document on the table, a printed copy of the messages she had written about the trust fund, about selling Ryan's condo. The paper was white, the ink dark and damning. "This is not happiness, Vanessa. This is theft dressed as a wedding." Ryan opened his folder then. It was the prenuptial agreement draft his lawyer had prepared, the one Vanessa had refused to sign. His voice shook as he spoke. "She told me it was insulting, that love should not have conditions, but after reading those messages, I see now why she refused." Charlotte moved quickly, snatching the papers from the table. "You will not destroy this family with pieces of paper. Do you understand me? Her face was red, her hand clutching the documents like a shield. For a moment, I almost pitied her. She had built her life on the glitter of reputation, and now the glitter was turning to dust in her hands. Ryan stood his decision plain in the set of his jaw. The wedding is off. His voice carried the weight of finality. Vanessa gasped, reaching for him, but he stepped back. You lied to me to everyone. I won't build my life on lies. Vanessa collapsed against the couch, wailing. Charlotte glared at me as though I had swung the axe myself. You've ruined everything, she whispered. No, I said softly. She ruined it. I only pulled back the curtain. The silence that followed was heavy, broken only by Vanessa's sobs. In that silence, I felt something close to relief. For once, truth had been spoken plainly. But the battle was not over. There was still the matter of my grandmother's estate, the $2 million everyone kept whispering about. And soon I would reveal exactly what that inheritance meant. A week later, we gathered not in a ballroom, but in the wood-paneled library of my grandmother's old house. The estate had stood untouched since her passing, its shelves lined with leather-bound books, the air still carrying her faint scent of lavender. Charlotte, Vanessa, and a few extended relatives sat stiffly in antique chairs, their faces tight with suspicion. Ryan was absent. He had already returned the wedding rings and cut all ties. On the mahogany table lay a thick envelope sealed with a notary stamp. I placed it carefully before them. This, I said, is grandmother's will. The one she signed and sealed before she died. Charlotte scoffed, though her hand twitched nervously at her pearls. We've seen the will. The estate is to be divided between you and Vanessa. That is final. I shook my head. You saw an earlier draft. This is the final version. She changed it after her last visit with me. I slid the document across the table. The rustle of paper filled the silence as Charlotte opened it. Her eyes skimmed quickly, then froze. I watched her face pale, the blood draining as the truth settled in. The will was clear. The full estate, valued at $2 million, shall pass to the family member who upholds the dignity and reputation of this family. Should one bring shame through scandal or dishonor, their share shall be revoked in full. Gasps circled the room. Vanessa shot up from her chair, her voice shrill. This isn't real. She wouldn't do this. She loved me. She loved dignity, I replied. She loved honor, and she knew what each of us valued most. Charlotte's hands shook as she set the papers down. For once she had no clever line, no shield of performance. Then came the knock at the door. Ryan's parents entered, faces grim. They announced their intention to reclaim every penny of the wedding expenses. Your daughter's deceit has humiliated our family, Ryan's father said flatly. We will see to it that the courts return what can be returned. Vanessa crumpled into her chair, her sobs echoing in the old library. The grand wedding she had imagined had not only vanished, but turned into a debt she could not repay. The estate she thought was hers had slipped into my hands, untouchable by her schemes. For years I had been the quiet one, the overlooked one. But in that room with the notary stamp gleaming under the lamplight, I felt the weight of my grandmother's trust settle fully on me. It was not triumph. I felt it was vindication. Vanessa had wanted wealth without responsibility. My mother had wanted reputation without truth. But inheritance is not only about money, it is about the legacy of character. And that legacy was now mine to guard. In the months that followed, the noise of the scandal slowly faded from the headlines, though echoes of it still lingered online. The video of Vanessa's breakdown remained etched in the internet's memory, reshared whenever another wedding fiasco made the news. She became a cautionary tale, the so-called scam bride of New York. Vanessa's life unraveled quickly. The vendors demanded payment. Ryan's family pursued legal action for the wedding costs, and she found herself drowning in debt. The same friends who once cheered her on at the club quietly disappeared, unwilling to be associated with her disgrace. She moved into a small, rented apartment far from the city, her dreams of wealth reduced to overdue bills and unanswered calls. Charlotte fared little better. Her social circle shrank, invitations dwindled. She tried to hold her head high at church, but whispers followed her down every aisle. For a woman who lived by appearances, losing reputation was worse than losing money. She still called me occasionally, her tone brittle, never apologizing, always circling back to one bitter refrain: you should have kept quiet. But I no longer lived in her shadow. With the inheritance secured, I used part of the $2 million estate to buy a brownstone in the city. Not a palace, not a castle, just a sturdy home with space enough for books for quiet and for the life I had built through work and patience. Another portion I directed into a scholarship fund at the university, honoring my grandmother's belief that dignity and education were intertwined. There were evenings when I sat by the window of that brownstone, watching the city lights flicker, remembering the chaos of that rehearsal dinner. I thought of the shattered glass, the gasps, the whispers, and I thought of my grandmother's words written in her neat script at the bottom of her will: honor outlives wealth. She was right. Money fades, reputations crumble, but truth has a way of lasting. So here I am telling you this story not to boast, but to remind you family and money can twist even the closest bonds, but dignity is worth more than any inheritance. If you think I made the right choice exposing my sister, comment right. If you would have handled it differently, share your way.